Welcome to Cultural Conversations with the Mississippi State University Libraries. I'm your host, Fred Smith, and my guest today is Dee Dee Baldwin. Dee Dee is the History Reference Librarian at the Mitchell Memorial Library. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you've got a really interesting history project, research project that you're working on that I think is very important. And if you would, tell us about it. It's about the African American legislators who were elected during Reconstruction. Tell us how your project got started and all about it.
Okay, well, how it got started is you might have heard of, there's these websites called Find a Grave and BillionGraves.com where people can go and upload pictures of headstones and help document cemeteries.
Yeah, I've looked at a few.
Yeah, so I do that as a hobby. And I was in Macon several years ago at a cemetery that's right off Highway 45 going through Macon, and it's in the woods, it's all overgrown, and it was a little African American cemetery. And I saw this headstone just laying flat on the ground, and it was for a man who was born in 1810, and that's really old for an African American headstone in this area. So I just got curious, and I'm kind of obsessed with genealogy, so
I knew you had an interest in that.
Yeah. So I got on Ancestry.com, and I just wanted to research this guy since, you know, he went back so far. And while I was on Ancestry, I saw that somebody had uploaded a picture of him. So I messaged the person, and I said, "Where did you find this picture?" And he said, "Oh, it came from the composite photo of the 1874 Mississippi legislature."
Oh, I've seen one of those. That's a really cool picture.
Yeah, and it just blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute. His headstone was just flat on the ground in the woods, but he was a Mississippi state legislator. So that got me
fallen over and was in the grass?
Yeah, just flat on the ground. And so that just got me really interested in researching him. So I shifted away from the genealogy to going on history sites and trying to find information about him as a legislator. And I learned that he represented Noxubee County in the State House from 1870 to 1873, and then he represented Noxubee in the State Senate from 1874 to 1877. And he was also a delegate at the 1868 Mississippi Constitutional Convention. So this was a pretty important man, yeah. And so researching him and the process of that, just the difficulty of being able to find stuff on him, it made me curious about all the other men that were in that composite picture. So I started getting interested in researching all of the first African American legislators in Mississippi during Reconstruction.
How many people that were African American were in the picture?
I'm not sure how many are in the picture. It's like a few dozen, I think. But total during Reconstruction, there were just over 120.
That's amazing.
And so I started researching them, and that led to creating a website where people could go to find more information on these men if they were researching them. So I set up the website in a way that people can just go through an alphabetical list of the names, and they can click on a man's name, and they can see this whole information page on that man. And whatever I'm able to find about him, I put on those pages. So if there's a photo available, that's on there. Biographical information, there's a bunch of newspaper clippings, whatever newspaper clippings I was able to find. Sometimes there are links. Every now and then the man was famous enough to have a Wikipedia page, like, you know, Hiram Revels, John R. Lynch, some of the more famous ones. Yeah. So there's links, there's biographical info, there's book excerpts, because I did consult some books, and because of the time some of these books were written in, the stuff that they wrote about these men was not nice. And so, you know, but I also felt that was important to have those primary sources to show, you know, what people were saying about them. So there's this whole website set up, and there's information pages on each man. There's a handful that I still haven't been able to find any information on.
That's amazing, with that 120 or 30 that you could find information on even half of them. I would think would be, you know, it's kind of amazing.
There's a few of them where all I could find was the fact that they served in this county for these years, but some of them had really common names or just initials, and so I couldn't narrow them down on the census. So there's a few that I couldn't find anything, but for almost all of them, there's at least some information, primary sources, just any information that somebody could want to find on those men. And so what I brought with me today is information on a couple of these men, and also I've gotten emails from some of these men's descendants, and they've provided me further information about what these men's families did later. So I brought along a couple of
we'd love
of men to show you.
Yeah, I'd love to see what you're doing with that.
Sure. So the first one I wanted to talk about, his name was George Washington Albright, and he represented Marshall County in the State House from 1874 to 1879. He was born in 1846 in Holly Springs, and he was taught to read by his mother. She had taught herself to read because, it was illegal to teach enslaved people. She had taught herself to read because she worked in the kitchen, and she could hear the white children practicing their lessons, and so she taught herself, and then she taught her children. And so George Washington Albright, when he was 15, he was a runner for Lincoln's Legal Loyal League, kind of a tongue twister there, which was an underground...
Don't know what that is.
I know, it was an underground network to spread news to other enslaved people in the area. And his own father was killed at Vicksburg because he was trying to join the Union Army.
Okay, do you have a picture of that?
I have a picture of Albright, yeah.
Okay.
So after the war, he became a prominent figure in education. He recruited teachers, and he served as a trustee of the state normal school. And he also helped to organize a volunteer militia, which, as you can imagine, that did not go over well with the KKK.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, so he got targeted by them, and that's what eventually drove him out of Mississippi. And that's a really common story. A lot of these men, they served in the 1870s, the majority of them, and then by 1880, they had either quit or they had completely left the state. There were a few that lasted a little into the 1880s and 1890s, but not very many. So by the time of the 1880 census, Albright was living in Kansas, and he stayed active in politics. And there's an 1882 article that I liked. It referred to him bringing down the house several times with loud and boisterous applause and laughter. So he was a really good speaker. And in 1892, he moved his family to Los Angeles. And that's where most of his descendants live now, including the descendants that got in touch with me. So I brought along some pictures of a couple of his descendants. They're both granddaughters of his. The first one, her name is Josephine. And she was one of the first teachers that helped to integrate the Los Angeles Unified School District. And she also set up a school for inner city kids to, help with like after school work and things like that. And she just died in 2017. So she was a really amazing lady, this granddaughter of his. And then he had another granddaughter named Barbara Jean, and you should see her picture in a second. Barbara Jean and her mother and father, they lived in a Japanese American neighborhood in the 40s, and they helped their Japanese American neighbors during the time of the internment camps. And so this is a picture of Barbara Jean holding a little Japanese child, and her mom cooked food for them. Her father helped drive them to the pickup sites when they were going to be deported to these camps. So they were really active in that. And that story came to me in a newspaper article that was sent to me by this lady that contacted me from Los Angeles. And so that's just an example, George Washington Albright's, descendants carrying on his legacy of being active and just doing good in the world in general. And so another man that I wanted to talk to you about was Emmanuel Handy. He represented Copiah County. He was in the House from 1870 to 1873. And he was born around 1834. He served with the 82nd Regiment of the U.S. Colored Troops. And by the time he ended his service, he was a second sergeant. And along with Isham Stewart, he was also a representative at that 1868 State Constitutional Convention. And he proposed a really interesting resolution which declared he wanted there to be, quote, an acceptance of the civil and political equality of all men. And that was really radical because a lot of those white people, even if they were willing to work with the African American legislators, they didn't really believe that they were equal. And so for him to propose that was really, really radical. So just like George Washington Albright, Handy left Mississippi. At some point before 1880, he had moved to Kansas, and Kansas is where he died in 1922.
Did they leave because they didn't feel safe?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
they were threatened all the time, these people. And so Emmanuel Handy is another one whose descendants contacted me. And you can see in this picture here, these are some photos that his third great-granddaughter sent me.
Wow.
Right, so the one in the top left, that shows his grandsons. These are the sons of Emmanuel Handy Jr., so they're his grandsons. And then in the bottom right, that lady sitting in the middle there, she was Cora, and that was his granddaughter. And surrounding her are her children. And so you can just see these are both, a fine-looking bunch of people. And that's just another example of how these men, had these great legacies that were carried on. And this picture that just came up here, these are photos that I took in the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum on opening day. I was walking through the museum. It was super crowded because it was the first day. And I saw that composite photo of the 1874 Mississippi legislature. And I got really excited because I had been working on that for so long. And
Is that the one that you were using?
yeah, that's the picture. And so you can see they used it in two displays. The one on the left is about the Reconstruction legislators, and then the one on the right is in a display about the Clinton riots that took place in 1875. So they used it in two displays, and I got so excited seeing it there in that museum.
Yeah, that's a amazing picture, and to find all of these people. So those people just contacted you because you had put your website up?
Yeah, they had found it on Google, just searching different things. I think a couple of people that have contacted me, they saw the information on Ancestry, because a lot of these men, in addition to putting their information on my site, I would also enter their information into Ancestry to make it easier for their family to find them.
Well, you're going to end up putting it, I hope, on the library website at some point.
We're going to there's going to be discussions about that.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that'd be a good place for it to be if it works. Certainly, that you've got a whole lot more that we could show and talk about. But anything else that you'd like to end up with?
I think they're going to put the URL up for you in a second. So other than that, that's the summary of it. And I just it is an ongoing project.
Oh, it's going to take you the rest of your life, it sounds like, to
Yeah.
to do that. Well, thank you very much for being here and showing us this, and maybe we'll do another show with some more, because you still have 130 probably that we could talk about. Thank you very much.